A cultura é um dos mais preciosos instrumentos de democracia. É um canal de expressão plural que permite a convivência de diferentes vozes, histórias e visões de mundo. E por isso a cultura, tal qual a democracia, deve ser defendida e fortalecida. Essa é a função da Lei Rouanet, a principal política pública de incentivo à cultura brasileira. Com ela, perseguimos a missão de assegurar o acesso democrático à produção e à difusão cultural. Ao longo de mais de 3 décadas, a Rouanet permitiu que inúmeras iniciativas culturais, antes inviáveis, ganhassem o mundo. Revelou histórias, preservou tradições e transformou vidas. Lei Rouanet, há 33 anos, tornando a cultura brasileira mais plural, acessível e democrática.
Casal de dançarinos se olham sorridentes. Uma banda orquestrada para de tocar. Logos: Lei Rouanet, Ministério da Cultura, Governo Federal, Brasil, União e Reconstrução.
Onde tem cultura, a Vale está. No poder criativo que nasce dos palcos, orquestras, das artes, das ruas e dos museus. Na valorização das diversas identidades brasileiras e na preservação de memórias. É valorizando a cultura que crescemos e evoluímos juntos. Instituto Cultural Vale.
Meu nome é Aguimar Júnior dos Santos Seixas, conhecido em Paraty como Júnior Peixe. Sigo sempre a cultura caiçara, que é buscar o seu próprio alimento, trabalhar com a natureza, respeitando a natureza, a mata. Meus avós ensinou para mim sempre isso, que você planta e um dia você vai colher. Você pesca o que você vai comer. Eu planto num barco. Entendeu? Eu tenho plantas medicinais dentro do meu barco, tem bastante tempero, né? Eu me considero como zelador, né? Eu sempre falo para os meus amigos, galera, vamos ser zelador do lugar que a gente vive. Estou entrando numa mata para colher o meu cacau, que eu plantei quando eu tinha 16 anos de idade. É uma praia secreta aqui em Paraty. A aparição de baleia, golfinho, tartaruga, isso aparece para quem só está conectado mesmo com a natureza. Tem muitas pessoas que falam, eu queria tanto ver. E aí, você está conectado com a natureza? A natureza ela te dá. Esses são os presentes dela. É porque a gente tem esse elo com a natureza, né? A natureza está na gente já, né?
Ministério da Cultura e a Associação Casa Azul apresentam 23ª FLIP, Festa Literária Internacional de Paraty. A FLIP conta com o benefício da Lei Federal de Incentivo à Cultura, Lei Rouanet, PRONAC 235060, e possui acessibilidade para pessoas com deficiências física, visual e auditiva. Tem patrocínio Jequitibá do Nubank. Patrocínio Figueira da Vale. Patrocínio Guapuruvu do Itaú e da Motiva, por meio do seu instituto. Patrocínio Cedro do SESC, da MAC Móveis e de O Globo. Patrocínio Araribá, da Globo Livros. Apoio institucional da Prefeitura de Paraty, Governo do Estado do Rio de Janeiro, IFAM, Instituto do Patrimônio Histórico e Artístico Nacional e Museu do Território. É uma criação e realização Associação Casa Azul e Ministério da Cultura, Governo Federal, Brasil, União e Reconstrução. Flip, o encontro da literatura com a cidade.
Afternoon, Paraty. I would like to start by thanking the support of the Swedish Embassy and Swed Studies for supporting this presentation by making the presence of LIFT possible here. If you want to address any questions, you might write to our wonderful team right here, and they will bring it to me. And to say that the authors will, of course, autograph their books in the Flippy bookstore. I am a big fan of all the authors that came through the stage, and I guess we have similar tastes because until now it's working. So we now have we're halfway through, which makes me very pleased because everything is working, but also I'm starting to miss it already. In order to mediate this roundtable, the first person I thought when Leave accepted to participate, I thought about Giovana, was this mediator who is Nanni Rios. Every time I talk about her, she is from the publishing house Ballet in Porto Alegre. Buy books from those who live and not those who want to colonize the moon. Nanni Rios, you have the floor. Yes, we are united. Publishers unite. Good afternoon, Paraty. I won't be alone here. I would like to invite Liv Strömquist and Giovana Madalosso to the stage.
Vamos lá, mais uma mesa.
Okay, yet another roundtable. This is 10th, Everything That Blooms. I will introduce our guests, but you will get to know more about them throughout our conversation. It will be very nice. And Liv Strömquist is Swedish, sorry. She studies political sciences and sociology in Brazil. She has 3 books published. They are here with me. I brought them with me. The Reddest Rose Blooms, subtitled Love in the Times of Late Capitalism, or Why Do People Fall in Love So Rarely These Days? The other book is in the Hall of Mirrors, this one here. And the subtitle is Self-Image in Trance, or Beauty and Authenticity as a commodity in the area of likes and other beings of the self. And the first one, The Origin of the World, with the subtitle, A Cultural History of the Vagina, or the Vulva versus the Patriarchy. You shouldn't be afraid of the vulva or all of us, because it will be fun. Now,
E ao lado da Liv, a gente tá.
And we have Giovana Madalosso, a Brazilian writer.
Nascida em Curitiba e também
Born in Curitiba, and she has written 4 books published in Brazil. I have with me here the Madalosso, her latest novel. Lucky the ones have already read it, and the other ones I didn't bring because I wouldn't be able to come to the stage. Sweetie Tokyo, Everything Can Be Stolen, Tudo Pode Ser Roubado, and A Teta Racional. Yet again, another round of applause for Giovana Madalosso. I know that Anna already said that. At the end, you of course, you can address questions to the authors, and I will try to include them in our conversation. So participate. Well, as a mediator in writing these books, I was able to bring these authors here. It wasn't that hard, actually, because there are many things that have to do that relate there. First, a feeling. We're going to talk about emotions here. And it's courage. By reading these books, I identified the courage as a act of creation. This is a beautiful thing to say. And the first one I identify is the ability to revisit Giovanna's character when she is in that difficult moment of her life. She goes back to the house where her grandmother lived, and that's where the story unfolds. And this revisiting will present many things. And Liv, in her books, she prepares a story of revisiting, of return, and the story of philosophy, of social sciences, of the patriarchy, basically. And this is a very brave and bold attitude. So I would like you maybe to comment a little bit about this strategy of revisiting in your presentation. I'm not sure if the interpretation, is interpretation working? Well, if Giovana could start, I can restate the question.
Oh, I don't need a microphone. I got distracted here following the translation, so I think that I understood the question considering the return to my grandmother's home. It's curious now, it's so beautiful, this part of literature, because I've used this term a lot, that I began to realize that I call it the oracular power of the novel, because when you're working with novels, they get mixed with your life, and you approach things that you didn't even know that you were interested in before, and it was beautiful. Again, in Uma Batida Só, like in other books of mine, my book interwove my creative process, interwove with my life. So exactly at the moment when I was living in São Paulo, I was extremely vulnerable of accompanying a disease and illness of a family member of mine, and I thought that I needed to go back to my roots in Curitiba, in southern Brazil, and also my parents, and for various other reasons. It was a moment in which this story was emerging in me, and coincidentally, I returned to my hometown, and my narrator returned to her hometown, and that was where this story unfolded. So, I believe that this return to my hometown and my roots symbolically is beautiful. You just talked about in the narrator, it wasn't my plan, actually. When we go back, we look at things in a different way. This narrator, she gets up early, she leaves the house, she talks about all of the towns have this, the small towns, the people that leave and people that stay behind, the perception that she had of those who leave, that people have of those who leave as if the courageous people that go to explore the world. And I felt that when I went back to my hometown, how courageous it is for people to leave. When this narrator went back to her hometown, she began to look at the people, the townspeople. I felt this in my return. She said, okay, people were courageous to stay. They were brave to stay, because to stay is to face the family wounds and hurts, the transformations, things that you have no power over. She talks about her book, all the passions of those who left. You would never withstand the love and the hurt in a small town. It's a very effective return that I portray in my town that I was for me. It's never easy to go back to your hometown, but it can be very rich and very beautiful.
Eu vou repetir.
So I'll repeat the question. I repeat the question for you. I was saying that your two books have something in common, in my opinion. The boldness as a creative act. And the first courage you have is revisiting a past. In the case of Giovana, going very emotional, going back to the place where she was born and was raised. Her character goes back to her grandmother's house. And in your case, a revisiting into history, looking back, but with your feet forward. It's something very interesting in the different philosophies we know, non-Western philosophy, that is, this revisiting in order to rewrite this past, your history of sociology, philosophy, and the patriarchy. If you could comment on that.
I remember that when I first became a feminist, I became aware of oppression against women. I was starting to noticing a lot of things around me, and I was in the library, and I found like a book from a social anthropologist, that had visited like a lot of other places, and like he was describing societies in the past with very different gender structures. That in the past there could have been a lot of different ways for men to be a man, a lot of different ways to be a woman, and this was very inspiring to me to feel like, okay, but it doesn't have to be the way that it is now. So looking at the past, looking how it has been different in a lot of different time periods means that it's not something static, it's something that we can kind of decide together and decide like how our society should be.
Another feature that I saw, I guess, reading your books was tenderness, all the tenderness involved in your description. I tried to guide my line of thought around emotions in your books because it says a lot about Madalosso. This is a tribute to this book that touches many hearts. Those who read it will understand it. So the next feeling would be tenderness. I would like Giovana maybe to comment about a character called Nico from her book Madalosso. And then she will also read an excerpt to illustrate this feeling.
Nico is my favorite character to this day. When I was finishing writing the book, Nico was a boy who likes opera. He's 10 years old, and when I was at the end of the novel, I listened to an opera. I listened to music before I write to enter into the soul of the character. I began to weep, thinking of Nico. I said, oh, I got involved in this character, right? But let me tell you how Nico emerged in my life, how he appeared. Madalosso talks about human emotions, a lot about the heart metaphorically and non-metaphorically as well. And there's a narrator who's doing health treatment for her heart. And I wanted to talk about in the book because while I was accompanying my daughter in a health treatment, it was totally different from what was in the book, but she also had a disease that was treated. I began to observe the mothers in the hospital with their children, sometimes with serious diseases, like Nico's case, my character, Nico. I said, I need to put this pain in my story. So Nico appeared in this story, in this place, to talk about his mother's pain and to attempt to explore and discover what happened in people's heads, and a child who has a serious disease at 10 years of age, and how a child can deal with the perspective of death, which is this perspective that not even us adults are able to deal with or handle. So Nico appeared like that. And it was really beautiful in the creative process of Nico, my character. Each book is a learning process, totally different, one book to the next. And I said, okay, great, Nico has to have a serious disease, a serious illness. I had thought perhaps of a lymphoma or other possibilities, but I didn't know anything about this topic like lymphomas. So I began to search for doctors to help me to create a timeline of the symptoms, how this disease would be, because disease are a definitive thing in a character like this, like Nico, and not even physicians cared, because I talked with a few doctors, and when we began the conversation, they understood that I pestered them a lot. I asked for a lot of details. They ended up saying, okay, don't pester me. They're treating lives in the hospital emergency department in their clinics, so they didn't give me much attention. So I was kind of discouraged, and I said, okay, perhaps I won't be able to do this character. I'm going to think of something else, and something happened that was wonderful. That's why I love Flip, and for many reasons, I thought it was going to start with this, with a smile. It's came here for 10 years now. 2 years ago I came, and it was a festival. I said, okay, I was a fan. A fan came up to me and said, I love your work, they said, as an anthropologist. You're an anthropologist, okay? You love my work as an anthropologist, so let's build a character together. You, the anthropologist, and me. So we worked together with a conversation, 2 or 3 hours conversation, where I began to understand everything about that topic. Nico gained a life. My cell phone, I saved it. I sent messages. Nico entered in such and such a place. Does he have to wear a mask in the hospital? Can he eat salami? And our involvement reached a place where my daughter she was jealous because the person came to eat at my home, and she said, Mom, even Nico has his own physician. I don't have one myself. It was a physician, and this kid symbolizes this. He came to help me to explore this place. It's a book that talks about faith, religion, and I have a narrator who is an atheist like me. The mother is extremely religious, like an evangelical and half Catholic, a fanatic, and Nico has his spirituality in the book. He brings the spirituality, a kind of naivete, but incredible wisdom at the same time, because I learned from these physicians, these doctors, that sometimes these children are more mature to deal with the prospects of death than the parents themselves. So I don't know if I answered your question with my consultation with the doctor about Nico's illness. In these visits to Nico's health, Nico moves this character, the narrator, in these entries in Nico's health. There's a special scene where the narrator writes a scene that I also think represents quite well. I'm going to give you my copy of my book for you to read it. Okay, this Maria João, Sara, and the boy traveled to one of these places for cure, in one of these destinations for cure, where there are a lot of patients. One day they go to a bar, in the evening they go out to go to a bar, all three together. Sarah went back. I got up and said to Nico that I'd be back soon. The bar was in the back of the hut. First, you had to get a drink token. I got in line at the cashier, which ran alongside the dance floor, now so full that some couples were dancing outside the covered area. The fact that there were fewer men didn't matter. Some women danced with women. Next to me, one woman spun another around. At one point, she reached into her pocket, grabbed an inhaler, pressed it to her mouth, and then pulled her partner back in. Nearby, there was a couple I suspected might even be dead. They must have been around 90 years old. Their shriveled, tiny bodies fit together perfectly. Maybe they had fit together like that every day for nearly a century, and they made small, restrained, almost imperceptible movements. You had to watch them for a while to be sure that they were moving at all, to be sure that they weren't two statues or two regulars who had died on the dance floor, and because they were leaning on each other and hadn't fallen. Another one who caught my attention was a man with a prosthetic leg. At first, I thought the woman dancing with him had nothing going on, but I soon noticed that she had a colostomy bag strapped to her hip, where her intestinal waste must exit. But that's not what made the couple stand out. It was their rhythm. It even seemed like his prosthetic limb helped him, because he could tilt at a perfect angle, making his legs slide precisely between hers. Thigh to thigh, pelvis to pelvis, forward and back, a beautiful thing to watch. And there were those dancing alone, like a man who trembled so much and a woman in a wheelchair. who spun on her wheels in time with the chorus from a corner of the floor. It was all supposed to be sad, and that way it was the catalog of ailing bodies, that exposed fracture of human fragility. But there was something good there, something that I picked up on but couldn't quite name until I got to the cashier. Behind the greasy-haired woman selling tokens, there was a sign. There was a sign saying, "Don't stop living." Just like that, in all capital letters, as if shouting at the customers. So that's it, I thought, grabbing my token and crossing the dance floor to the bar. While so many, understandably, were stuck at home, that crowd had chosen to live with pain, with pins, with bandages, with prosthetics, with feces, and that was beautiful. So beautiful that it made me want to heal even more, so I could keep on suffering through life.
Eu acho que é pouco.
Yes, this is where your literature, the two of you meet, when you have a bit of criticism, different criticism, and then we have this beautiful static image for us to keep it with us until the end of the reading. Now, to Liv, she also brought an excerpt of one of her HQs. We talked about this yesterday during lunch. And we talked about the comparison between Brazil and Sweden, and we concluded that to be a woman anywhere in the capitalist is the same shit. I don't know what you think, if you agree. So we have an excerpt of the Redis Rose that Liv will read, and we will see it here on the big screen.
When Leonardo DiCaprio and Sports Illustrated swimsuit model Bar Raffaeli broke up in 2011, a source told the Daily Mail, "It was an amicable breakup. They're still friends and they're still talking. They just grew apart and went their separate ways." Then Leonardo DiCaprio got together with actress Blake Lively, 24. They broke up and Leo got together with Victoria's Secret model Erin Heatherton, 23. Then they broke up and Leo got together with German Victoria's Secret model Tony Garn, 22. Then they broke up and Leo started dating Sports Illustrated swimsuit model Kelly Rohrbach, 25. Then they broke up and Leo started dating Polish bikini model Ella Kawalec, 23. Then they broke up and Leonardo got together with Danish Sports Illustrated swimsuit model Nina Agdal, 25. And then they also broke up. A source tells the Daily Mail they both decided it was a good idea to break up. They are staying friends, and they're on good terms with each other. Or there's one missing says, "I just don't feel anything." Or maybe he does feel something, just not so strong. It's not like Leonardo DiCaprio feels like he's going to die if, for example, Tony Garn isn't bicycling beside him on a city bike through New York. It doesn't matter super much to him if he will ever see Erin Heatherton again. It doesn't matter super much to Erin Heatherton if she will ever see Leonardo DiCaprio. Leonardo DiCaprio is just like a lukewarm cooktop, a stove that never really gets the water to boil. If you put your hand on it, it won't get burned. And that's totally okay. It's not wrong. It's just that you don't feel very much. You don't feel it. Some sociologists and philosophers say that the feeling of being in love has become increasingly rare in our time. The feeling arises less and less often or not at all. we are all like Leonardo. But why?
Você pode...
Could you maybe... Sorry. Thank you. Could you maybe comment a little bit about, the beginning of your book of The Reddest Rose?
Yeah, so this book starts with Leonardo DiCaprio. It's a little outdated because since then he dated, I think, 3 more women and broke up with them too. So yeah, but so the book is kind of an investigation of the reasons for Leonardo DiCaprio not falling in love, and yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ontem também no...
Yesterday during lunch, we were talking about a topic that is in her book, Fruit of Knowledge. And yesterday we talked about, we talked about a topic of fruit of knowledge, which is the interest that some men have for a vulva and what this brings to us. And sometimes many women, just a contact with their vulva is not something so uncommon in their daily lives. So we taught a new word for Livia, which is siririca, to please yourself for a woman. She had never heard about a siririca, and she asked me to write it down so she could, she took a picture to learn how to write siririca. And so these taboo topics, it's wonderful to talk about in the biggest literary festival in the country, to talk about a siririca. So the more we talk about this, the more it is in our mouths, and it might be cool. And there's this wonderful scene in Batida Só that I would like Giovana to talk about. It is a scene in which her character, she has this issue, her heart issue, and she has taken a lot of medication so that she has to stop emotions, because to feel any kind of emotion, she could die. So at one moment, she's testing with her own body to see what she's feeling still. So we don't want to, we won't read the whole excerpt, but maybe Giovana will say something.
Looking for the microphone again. This scene emerged because she's full of antidepressants to not feel. She says that she's not even a homo sapiens. She's kind of stoned. She's like a homo stoned, like a lot of us. Humankind takes so many medicines. At this moment that I was writing, I said, but a side effect, an obvious side effect that needs to be described is the issue of sexuality. First, it's part of all my books because I can't see life without sexuality. And so I thought to myself, what about her sexuality with all these antidepressants? So what happens with the antidepressants? She tries to have an orgasm. She has erotic dreams, but first, actually, she would like to fuck somebody, but she fears her heart with tachycardia and tachycardia and getting involved emotionally. She chooses not to get involved with anybody, and this leads her to a place which is quite masturbatory in female pleasure. When I began to think about this, I said, okay, I want to talk about this part because I realized that this appears little in literature. Siririca. Yesterday we discovered that it's not, S is not a word, there's not a word in Swedish for siririca, right? No, there isn't. So they have masturbation or onanism. And what about siririca in Portugal? There's no word for siririca in Portugal. Just masturbation or onanism. This shows that we don't even have a word. If we don't have a word for it, we talk little about it. If we're in 2025 now, and a lot of countries don't even have a word, a fun word for this act that's so important and fundamental and pleasurable, and we need to talk about it. And when I realized this entered the story not only as a spin-off of the antidepressants or the issue of sexuality, but I think it entered into the story of my almost political view of some topics to think we have to have more siriricas in the literature, right? I had Ronaldo Moraes, I just read a stretch of Pornocopeia. I want to launch and write the greatest siririca in Brazilian literature. And people that are going to read my book, I made an attempt, apparently it is. I have a friend who's a researcher. She's researching this subject. We talked about this. She's a scholar. She's mapping this, and you count on the hands of your finger the number of siriricas that exist thus far that she was able to detect in the world. So to bring this to the story, I thought had a political meaning for me, for us to be able to talk about pleasure, occupying several different pages with this, and pleasure for the woman herself, because it's interesting in her IRCA's study, there are other siriricas. They may not be, there are women touching themselves for men. Okay, they're being watched by the man, not only for their own pleasure, right? For the man's pleasure as well.
Now I'm curious about the translation, how interpretation is going. If it's hard work for our interpreters or not to talk about masturbation and siriricas. Another topic in your Fruit of Knowledge is a cover. It is a book that is published in around 20 countries, if I'm not mistaken. I was updating this data with a publisher. And here in Brazil and another country, only in Brazil and another country, in other countries, this was censored. This cover was censored. So Liv was telling us about this, saying that different posters with this cover also were censored. And what we have here is a menstruation scene. And so there is this censorship, this taboo regarding the vulva, women in a certain way will impose certain conditions for us. And this is a topic that we can even talk about because it's like, you know, an obstacle in our way. So if you could talk to us about your cover and these different situations and obstacles or censorship you found, and how much does this bother you or bother you wherever you go around the world?
Yeah, I don't think that I know that this particular picture was chosen only in 2 countries. It's in Brazil and actually in Russia, because this book was published by a very small feminist book publisher in Russia. That now she, of course, had to leave the country and so on. But this this book couldn't be. They have like a. It has to be like with a big sign. You have to be 18 years old to read it, and she couldn't have it on book fairs and so on because of this cover. But I don't know. But in Sweden, I made an exhibition in the subway with this picture, and it caused a lot of reactions. A lot of people were throwing paint on this picture and not wanting it to be in the subway. And there was like this political debate around whether it should be prohibited to show this type of images, because it was considered very offensive. And there is a right-wing populist party in Sweden who wanted, like they proposed a law to prohibit this type of art in the public sphere because of the provocative content. But also when there was this display, a lot of people also told me very kind of positive experiences of seeing these images actually in the subway. So there was like a grandmother who wrote to me and told that her grandchild had pointed at this and asked, "What is this? Why does the woman have blood?" And she felt it was a very good opportunity for her to kind of explain to her grandchild about menstruation and so on. So yeah, I had both negative and positive reactions.
In the bookstore, when they asked me, is this good for a 12-year-old girl? Yes. For a 30-year-old, yes. For an 80-year-old, yes. So I guess there are stories here that that it's just, I was telling this story about yesterday, the different ages that it is indicated for. You know, for 12-year-old, 30-year-old, 40-year-old, 80-year-old women, everyone should read it. So it's a book for all ages. It's very recommended because it deals with a topic that maybe an 80-year-old lady has never talked about. And just to show you how Liv loves a good controversy, our curator, Ana Lima, reminded me that I forgot to say there's yet another book published in Brazil, which is astrology, astrologia. It's as controversial as the others. I didn't have it here, so I'm sorry I didn't refer to that book. So I'm going to, well, we have questions from the audience, and I will try to maybe fit them with my own questions. There's a question here from Valentina Seabra, and I believe she is referring to this book here, to The Reddest Rose, talking about relationships in times of late capitalism. And this is a topic that is not fully included in this book. Liv was something more in the more critical approach, very well justified criticism. But considering your research in order to write The Reddest Rose, I would like to know if you believe in open relationships and non-monogamic relationships. Have you ever lived this type of relationship? Are we ready for this type of thing? I guess we have a topic that we need to revisit, it seems.
I don't think that there's like a clear answer to like what is the best way. I feel that it's very kind of individual and personal, like how people choose to live. I don't really believe, because people tend to ask me this question, like what is the best way to live, and do you have the answer? But I kind of don't want really to respond, because I think that everyone has to kind of figure it out themselves. So, but yeah, I don't know. I heard a lot of people who read this book with their partner or with someone that they are involved with, and like it can open up to a lot of like a discussion, and then you can work something out that works for you.
Now I'm going to share a experience of reading, because when reading The Reddest Rose, it will map exactly how men will, be in the forefront of our retrocession. When they decide to do a certain thing, we are submitted to them. When women finally understand what is their way of doing things, because our desire is to uproot the oppressor. But when we finally reach, men will invent another place, a worse place to be, that will also be submit us. So I was thinking, for a non-heterosexual person, how this works, how freeing this is not to be linked to this relationship with a male love. So this was an experience of reading that I thought, wow, this book mapping the sociology of how we deal with men. And I think we don't deal with men. That's the answer. We actually do not deal with them at all. So just stop dealing with men. But obviously, this is just utopia. This is just... So maybe if we could talk a little bit about this, because it's interesting how you, in The Reddest Rose, you map exactly with names that we don't know very well. Maybe the most pop name here would be Adorno, something that will make you, beautify you. So in your research, in your sociological, what was your obsession to write The Reddest Rose? And the word that comes to mind is the ornament or adornment.
Sorry, the last word that you say.
Like an ornament. So the reddest rose, and capitalism, this link between the two things. I said the most pop person here, that maybe the only name that most people have heard about is Adorno, and all the other ones are unknown.
Like you asked me like where I find them, the other philosophers, and
yes,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah. So Finally, I understand. I was studying sociology in the university, and I've also studied philosophy and political science. And I think that from the beginning, I was just very interested in theory. And when I read theory, I read it very intuitively. So it's like when something really interests me, when I feel like, oh my God, I've never thought about this. Like my heart starts to beat, and I feel like I'm really happy, and I feel like I never thought about this in this way. Or then I put it like in a special pile and save it for my book. You know, so nothing boring is in my book. Like nothing that is self-evident. Nothing that I feel like, okay, I've heard this before. It has to be something that really kind of makes you think like, wow, this is really true, and I've never thought about it this way, you know. So it's like, so I just kind of, I just love to always look for theory, sociological theory, and this book is quite heavily based on theories of Eva Illouz, sociologist Eva Illouz, and I highly recommend to read her books as they are, for example, because they are very interesting. And yeah, I just look all the time for different theories to use.
I would like to go back maybe to the matter of Batida Só. I thought that at the same time that you that Liv will, you know, go back in history in the scientific realm or sociological realm, and she does it very cruelly almost. She goes there and she will make fun and she will expose all the differences and incongruencies of other times and even not so far away. And at the same time, I would like to go back to the topic of religion in Batida Só. As an atheist, it was very interesting. I felt very involved by your book, Giovana. She said, oh, there she goes. She's going in the middle of a city, in the middle of Nori, to find alternative cure. Where is this going? And then I saw myself completely involved for how much this girl, seduced by Nico, that child, opened herself to other forms of cure that she, until then, wasn't, you know, patient enough to deal with, and we would even make fun of. She had, you know, prejudice against. So maybe if you could talk a little bit more about this religious journey from the standpoint of someone that apparently didn't need this. So I'm an atheist. I don't need to know if you are or not, but still.
I didn't need any more trouble because I thought, my God, why am I writing this book? And one of my friends said, it's going to go all wrong. There's very difficult topics to deal with, so it might have gone wrong. But nothing I write is well planned. It's planned like Liv in the sense of separating the references, beginning to gather the references that I'm going to work with, but it's not planned in the sense that it's never, okay, I think that Brazil is going through such and such a time, and we have to achieve faith. That's as a topic. That's not how it works. Perhaps, unfortunately, because I worked based on my anguish after I finished writing Sweet Talk, which was my previous novel. I began to write a book with the narrator in menopause. I knew that it was going to be great, this topic, menopause. It was going to sell in Miranda July, but I was trampled by life. As Hap told you, my daughter began this health treatment, and I went to other places to write. And in this journey, what happened to me? I'm an atheist and have always been since childhood, 8, 9 years old. Everybody in my community, in the Italian community, went to have their first communion. I said, Mother, I don't believe in God. I'm not going to do communion. I don't know what I was reading to be thinking that I was an atheist already at 8 years of age. But I grew up very atheist, and when I was confronted with the issue of illness, the body, and death, I needed to hold on to something. I wanted to hold on to something, and I hadn't created muscles for faith. I talk in the book, faith is like muscles. You need to exercise your faith. It doesn't come up overnight when you want it. And I searched for it, and I wasn't able. I didn't know what to look for and what to support myself on. And this book was born of this anguish, this despair. And there's a decision that I need to make in a certain stage. I said, no, I want to have this narrator, an atheist narrator, a woman, very religious woman, to have the counterpoint, the boy's mother. And I said, okay, what kind of religion are they going to have? I said, I don't want to talk about religion. I want to talk about faith, not religion. If I go into the topic of religion, I'm very humble in this sense. I don't have criticism. I think each person finds their own spirituality. Each person has their issue of their deities. I don't have any judgment about that. I didn't want to bring any judgment to the book. What I wanted to actually talk about atheism, faith, and spirituality represented in that boy. So in this journey of Madalosso, it was a very humble journey. What is all this about faith? My ignorance with regard to religions. So there was a truck that passed in front of me and things that happened. I was like bowled over, like the hematologist that flipped. I became the epigraph in one of the tomes, which was nobody can explain God. It's a phrase on the truck. That's great. On the bumper, I read a lot. I read a lot of things. Nobody can explain God. It was on the bumper of a truck that passed by in front of me. So at the end of this journey, which is to write a novel, I thought that I was maybe, like always, more questions than answers, as always. And again, increasingly more an understanding of my size, of my ignorance, and my respect with regard to faith and religiosity of other people. It's really moving. Very moving. Now I'm going to talk about one of Liv's books. I've talked about it. I'm going back to this in the Hall of Mirrors, talking about self-image, internet, likes, and etc. This centered on the self. I can imagine your answer to this question. It's kind of a rhetorical question. What made you want to write this book, Hall of Mirrors? Because we're flooded with these images and all this social pressure, but Liv is capable of delving even deeper beyond the surface of the screens. So I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about how you began to write Hall of Mirrors. Okay?
Yeah. Kind of noticed, like everyone, I think, is noticing that we are living in a society that is more and more dominated by the photograph, and the photograph of your own face, or the image of your own face, is kind of appearing. I think it was also during COVID, when you have a lot of Zoom meetings, and you are confronted with your own face in a way that you usually are not. Like there are a lot of situations where you usually can forget about your own face, like when you are in a meeting, for example, or when you are like in a listening to someone talk or something like that. But like in the era of Zoom meetings, and you kind of have your own little square, you look at your own face very much, and we have the selfie and people posting all the time, so kind of your own face becomes very kind of intruding. So I was just kind of, I just wanted to write an analysis, because I think that it's a really huge shift that is going on in society because of social media, and because of the image of the face and the body constantly like being shown to us in this way. And I think that what I was really wanted was some kind of little bit of deeper analysis of this, like what is this, and what is it doing to us, this like cult of the photograph, and that we are surrounded by this mirror image of ourselves all the time. So yeah, that's what I try to do in that book.
There's a sentence. Today I was, looking at the books, trying to find, I didn't write it down, but there's a sentence, I guess it was this one here in the Hall of Mirrors. And Liv writes that the difference between guilt and shame, two words that are very common for women. So the difference between guilt and shame is that guilt we feel for what we do, and shame is for what we are. And this is something that opens for many debates, and even for other books that Giovana has written. Maybe if you could talk a little bit more about what you said, how this touches you. And with Sweet to Talk You, your book, Giovana, these female characters that you write are so real, so full of social issues, class issues. And Tudo Pode Ser Roubado, your other book, Giovana, there's a woman doing crazy things because she has a fetish on a guy. It has nothing to do with a sexual fetish. It's an intellectual fetish. And I would like you to comment about these two narrators, women narrators in your other books, maybe in this line.
I think that when I began to write, I've always written, when I began to publish, actually, I even wrote male narrators and ended up didn't actually work. It's interesting and everything, but when I began to write more and to publish more, I realized that there were a lot of stories by women to be told, and they didn't exist in literature. Street talk was born from this. I had a baby, and I began to walk in my neighborhood in São Paulo, and suddenly I began to notice the nannies who I'd never even noticed before. Look how absurd. We pass through this society that we live in. Brazil is full, chock full of domestic work. We don't even realize it, of the force and the importance and the exploitation involved in domestic work, like nannies. When I was beginning to write this novel, for me it didn't make any sense at all. I had good male characters, interesting stories to tell and everything, a narrator who's a rock star, a failed rock star, but I said, okay, there are a lot of women's stories that need to be told and written on paper. So as I say, I bring a narrator, a nanny as the narrator. I would really like to be in a country where more nannies that had written books and not necessarily be characters, but I found a place where I said, I want to tell these stories of the nannies, the domestic workers. I took these narrators, female narrators. This other book is narrated by the boss, with the female boss, the nanny, and the missus. It's very a corporate relationship. The abajou, this woman who works for this family, for this businesswoman, and her child is kidnapped and everything could be stolen. In the book, it's a book that emerged for me. I'm saying this because everything is crisscrossed by the issue of feminist heart producing the work, because sometimes I say, Giovana, leave your feminism for your columns in the newspaper, where I can be more activist, more militant and pamphleteering, and in literature be less feminist. I don't necessarily want to think in such a feminist way. I want to be freer as an artist, but feminism is very interwoven in my person. It appears even when I talk, I don't want to be feminist now because everything can be stolen. The book emerged after I wrote my first novel, The Rational Teat. It talks about the pain of breastfeeding. It was refused for more than a year by the publishing house. Several publishing houses turned me down for The Rational Teat. When they saw the name Rational Teat, they thought it was kind of crude. They even suggested the rational breasts rather than the rational teats. Breasts are good for you, but I want to talk about rational teats, right? Or rational tits. This rubbery thing which sags, which hurts, which bleeds. When I finished reading the rational teat, I said, I'm going to leave these issues aside, which touch more on feminism, and leave them aside. And it was very interesting because I did a waitress who was uncommitted to this issue, but afterwards I realized who is also a way of positioning myself with regard to this. As a female writer, we are demanded to write on issues on feminism, and this I don't think is cool as an artist, because we take so years to conquer a space in literature, and finally when you're there and you stand out, you receive an agenda of what you should say, you're supposed to say. So it's a feminist struggle to say this book has nothing about feminism. It's just a waitress who's stealing objects and bringing up other issues into literature. So I believe that these choices, there are always women, that I'm writing more women now in addition to a single beat. Batida só, this passion that I have for the female, the feminine rather necessarily feminism.
We are reaching the end of our roundtable, so if you have any questions, please address them to us. Just submit them in writing here. We have our team here around us, and I will read them here. I would like to ask a question for the two of you. Yesterday during lunch, we were talking about the issues of perimenopause. And Miranda July's book, and my curiosity of wanting to know what they were reading. So perimenopause is also a matter that is still a taboo. The Miranda July's book came to Brazil. It is called De Quatro, on all fours. And it talks about a topic that is considered like the first book about perimenopause of literature. I didn't check. No fact checking here. Just say that that's what I heard. So I want to know your opinion first about this book itself, because I believe we had a good conversation about it yesterday. It's an interesting topic for us here. And if you also think about considering maybe including this in your literature. I think it would be interesting to include it. Tell me if I'm right or wrong. Maybe it would be a good idea.
Yeah, we were talking about Miranda July's book, All Fours, yesterday, and I just think we agreed that we both really enjoyed this book, and it's a very hilarious, very enchanting book, and that's kind of deals with the topics also of menopause and perimenopause. Yeah, absolutely, that's a topic. It's not something that I'm planning on writing now, but ever since I made a book about menstruation, a lot of people have said, like, when is the book about menopause coming out? So, but not anything planned.
First, I wish to say that if it were not for estrogen, I'd be here today, but not talking as excitedly if it weren't for estrogen, okay? So yesterday evening, I remembered you, Liv, my estrogen, to have a good panel today. It's great to be talking about this today, because 10 years ago, I wasn't in perimenopause. There was a conversation that shocked me. I was at a party, and a woman was talking to me, and she said, okay, I've entered into perimenopause and menopause and everything. It's very annoying, but let's not talk out loud about this, because I didn't tell my husband yet. My husband doesn't know that I'm in perimenopause. This was so striking, right? And I said, okay, it doesn't suffice to be sick in menopause in silence on top of it, but the pain, in my opinion, is silence. It's difficult, yes, to go through menopause. It's complicated. It has several different symptoms, but not to be able to talk about this is what hurts more than the hot flashes. And if I'm part of the first generation, at least in Brazil, it's talking about menopause. Women suffered before us in silence without saying a word. And when we see an artist like Miranda and other people who are emerging now to elaborate this theme in fiction and the possibilities, the magnificent possibilities, and to be able to laugh about menopause, to be able to take this body that ages, and old women are banned by society. Women make this body science. They're horny. There's a great scene between two women. One of them is 70 years old. I think the other's close to 50. And it's incredible. This scene, it's extremely seductive. So I see this with great joy. I think we have to talk more about menopause. I think this is going to it's going to shine in the coming literature about addressing menopause.
Guys, I guess this is where we have to stop. I would just like to give the floor back to them so they can maybe address some final words to you. But I want to say that I'm very pleased to see writers such as yourselves writing, publishing, and reading, living authors that show that, writing cures where it hurts. So please, maybe a final words to address the audience, please.
Any final words to
final
say?
Words.
Just thank you for coming. I'm really happy to be here, and I will be signing the books, I think, outside. So if you want a signature, and we can talk outside.
Palmas para Liv Strömquist.
Maravilhosa. Let's have a round of applause for Liv Strömquist. I want to thank you all for attending, and I come to this literary festival and have been for more than 10 years before I was a writer. I learned from a lot of people on this stage. I came here afterwards to be for 5 people small sessions, and I've come here for so long. It's a great joy to be here and to having talked to you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Liv Strömquist. Tack så mycket.